Hi, my name is Sokuzan, and I'm one of Sokuzan's monks. Sokuzan so freely offers his love to us and his wisdom through these talks, and never asks us for anything in return. If you value what he does and what he is, and want them to continue, please visit our donate page at SokukoJi.org. Thank you.
Greetings. I hope you're all doing well. I'm doing fairly well this moment. Today's Dharma talk is titled, I don't remember what I call it.
Conversation with confusion.
Yeah, it's conversations, chatting, conversations with confusion. Might look very logical, very reasonable, very justified in our mind stream. Someone does this or does that or doesn't do this or that, and we immediately go into a rotation around through the thought process thinking, should they, shouldn't they? What should I have done? Couldn't they have done this? Like, we could have done this differently. I have to stop thinking this way. This doesn't seem to be working for me. I have to try something else. On and on and on and on. Instead of looking at the confusion, we're sucked into the confusion by way of trying to figure it out. Well, I got to figure this out. Well, I just need to come to grips with this. Well, there's lots of phrase fillers there, or little items that show up in our speech that tell you right away that you are not looking at this. As much as just a little gesture can be an indication that you are taking yourself out of the awareness of it, because the awareness is just too painful, because you are put in the position of knowing that you are helpless. You won't hear most people talk about it this way. You need to look at that helpless. When I say you don't need to do anything. Do whatever you want to do. You don't need to help this mandala, this community, but you could go to the website and donate. Or not. You do whatever you want to do, but if you want to help, if you feel aligned with what we're endeavoring to do here, then support this. This doesn't happen just with the force of gravity, although that's part of it. So it feels good, though, doesn't it? We're kind of contemplating, well, at least I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to figure this out. And perhaps you're getting help from a friend, or from an enemy, or from your partner, or from somebody else's partner. You're kind of trying to figure how to adjust relative truth so you can squeeze some kind of satisfaction, happiness, success out of samsara, and you can't. And I'm not saying it couldn't happen for 30 minutes, maybe 38 days, maybe longer, maybe 3 lunar cycles. Or instead of talking to a 4 Enneagram, you need to talk to a 7. I mean, I'm not mocking that. That's valuable, very valuable way of looking at a personality and the way it appears different from the personality right next to it. The structure of the way this personality gets what it wants and leaves what it doesn't want shows up in all of these different disciplines, including tarot card readings. I'm not kidding you. Of course, you already know that. So far, so good. So what am I saying about that? Conversations, discussing it with the confusion, discussing the confusion with itself. We break up into parts. So we even say it in a conversation. How many times have you said or heard somebody say, well, a part of me wants to go to Cuba and another part of me wants to stay here? Which one would you go with? Well, if you had family in Cuba, you might go there. Perhaps. And perhaps not, because conversations. I'm not saying they can't lead to some kind of a relative truth that seems like that's what it should be. That's what it is. Okay, I can hang my hat on that. I can do that. Now they understand this, but you never can really, when it comes to relative truth, you can't understand it all because it is not happening in the sequence that you think it is happening in. It has its own sequence, if there is such a thing as sequence, when it comes to the, shall we say, big picture, big mind. Quite often we get trapped in the story about the story about the story. We get trapped into that because there's an incredible seduction that is usually loaded with all kinds of emotions and feelings and cause and effect situations that show up as part of your personality, part of your life, part of your autobiography. There's just so much coming forth that will prevent you, hold you back from, and seal you off from seeing what you want to see. When I say what you want to see is you want to be happy. And there's that can happen. That happiness may not show up the way that you thought happiness would be, like getting whatever you want, whenever you want it. How boring is that? Well, you know how boring it is. Anything you get too much of starts to become extra or boring. You need some kind of entertainment going on. So instead of give and take or conversing with the confusion and thinking about it, calculating it, let me stop before I go any further. Actually, you may need to do some of that. Some people are so caught up in their mind stream, are so incredibly gifted, shall I say it that way, at thinking and everything, thinking about everything and analyzing and judging, and a very structural way of approaching everything. Not that the emotions aren't there, but the person has probably learned how to, unless there's some kind of big threat right now, how to keep that back so that they can just think about it. You know who you are. I'm not one of those guys. I wish if I had been able to learn how to do that, I probably wouldn't even be here. As my stepfather used to say, Jesus Christ, Bobby, use your goddamn head. That was my son, Takudo, put that on a little card and put it on the refrigerator in our house, and then titled it Dad's Early Religious Training. Quite funny. It wasn't at the time. It was looking back. And it's interesting how we get our identity from other people, who, especially if they have a forceful personality and a forceful delivery, and they don't seem to waver too much. They just come in and they tell you who you are, and since you don't have anything else, you start to believe it or think, well, that's probably the case. I guess I'm not very good at thinking about stuff. So what am I saying here? I'll tell you what I'm saying. As a way of working with the confusion, working with the suffering, here comes that word again, working with the tendency to be seduced into thinking that you can figure it out. That tendency is very, very powerful. After all, haven't we figured out a whole lot of stuff? Of course. And we've maybe been relatively successful in lots of ways. But what's being recommended here is that you turn your awareness to everything that is arising in consciousness. Hold very still. Hold that part of the consciousness, which is the body. This is consciousness, by the way, just on a very low frequency. Hold that part of the consciousness, which may be this. Maybe some aspect of the mind where you're slowly able to, instead of produce thoughts, thinking about thinking about confusion, talking to the confusion, about the confusion, and what you could do about confusion to get the confusion either back off or at least show why it has the right to be here, why the confusion is actually valid, and therefore I need to do thus and so or this and that. So hold everything still, and you'll notice that which continues to move, and hold everything still symmetrically so that you notice the asymmetry of the mind. The asymmetry of the mind is not something you need to correct, but you do need to see it. Because if you don't see it, then what happens is a fixation on whatever arises in the mind in terms of your idea about what just happened. Your idea about what happened, sometimes called an opinion, sometimes called a conclusion, sometimes called ignorance. And the path leading to that is that ignorance is usually passion or aggression, usually turns into ignorance before it turns back into the other side of the wheel, giving us the illusion of what? Time and space. It's unreal. It's relatively real. But if you see what this is, you'll see that it is an illusion. Looks powerful. Most of the world, I don't know what percentage, I'm not a statistician, but it looks like just about all of it is running on time and space. Running on time and space. Have you noticed that looking at a watch, where you're just looking at the buckle, you can't tell what time it is? But you're actually probably closer to ultimate truth when you just look at the buckle. Because there isn't anything but this, there isn't anything but now. And this is a lie, but at least it's a lie that is circular and is going in cycles, which is telling you over and over again, everything that you think is something is showing up and going away, and showing up and going away, and showing up and going away, including the illusion of your identity, of yourself. Keeps, as soon as you go to sleep, everything vanishes. You don't know who you are, you don't care who you are. And then you come into a dream state, and you might end up being, someone in New South Wales raising kangaroos. Totally ordinary. Been doing that for years and years. So watching, observing, looking at the movement without adding anything, without subtracting anything, and without shutting down. You've heard me say this hundreds of times. I'm going to keep saying it because I would like you to consider that and take what you think is you to the wall, sit down, hold still, watch the movement of the mind, and see the way in which the confusion continues to make sense in one area and not in another. A part of me wants this, as we hear ourselves say and hear others say, and a part of me doesn't. Well, a part of me wants this. Part of me wants to go to New South Wales. Part of me wants to stay in Missouri, or is it Missouri? Silly ideas from the point of view of my creativity is at an ebb, but I'm just saying that it's like that. It's like a part of me we divide ourselves up. If you don't divide yourselves up, what happens? Then the self-centered mind, the ego mind, gets confused because then it's too much on the razor's edge, too much in the middle of everything. It needs to have a reference point, and it will buy into a terrible, bad, evil reference point, like hitting someone because they're not acting like you think they should, or obeying someone, doing exactly what they say when you know you should get away from that person. Not give them one more moment of the pleasure of dominating you. That's hard to do. It's even hard to do with a sitting practice of meditation. Sitting meditation won't solve it. It will just over time, it'll make it more and 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 more clear to you what that is and what this is. So you won't get your idea of the nature of reality of the universe from anybody else, including the Buddha. You don't get it from anything. You see it. And when you start to speak out of what you see, it's interesting, but quite often what you're saying aligns with what the Buddha was pointing at 2,500 years ago. Nothing is separate from anything else. You see it. You actually look at it. And to you, it's ordinary. It's not some special, wonderful view of we're all one and some of that bullshit. Have some questions, please.
Change of mind. What are you pointing at with the asymmetry of the mind?
With what?
The asymmetry of the mind.
Just that it's off balance. It's going this way and that. And it's never just the body is. If the body mind are not separating themselves and in conflict, then when the body sits down like this, the mind will just be here. It would just be present. That's not an appropriate word, present. It doesn't really work because present means there's something that's not present. But we use dualistic language to point to it. But if you sit like this, nothing else happens. It's just stillness. That's actually the case even when you're jogging. But you have to realize it. You can't just try to make yourself feel like you're still or you're symmetrical. This is obvious symmetry. It's where we get the word from. We sit very still, but even this is different. One hand is above the other. Even this is different. If you look at a human face, it's just a little bit off. One ear is bigger than the other, or your nose only has one nostril. So you don't see those people very often. Is that humorous? So do you see asymmetry? It's just a way of saying you can hold a body pretty symmetrical and still, but you can't do that with a mind, because the way the whole dynamic shows up is to separate the two situations. Are not actually two situations. They're one situation that has the ability or the pliability or the quality of being able to separate. Just like sometimes you'll see incense smoke come out of the incense and there'll be two smoke trails that'll go out like that. It separates. What's he doing that for? You know why? Oh, you have a question?
If someone sees what this is, does that asymmetry go away?
No. It doesn't have to change into something else. You just have to see it. And then if you see it, you're finally, you could say it this way, you're finally genuine. You're no longer trying to be somebody else. You finally are just receiving the entire world as it is. That's all the sense fields do, is receive, produce anything.
True bowing. In that situation where it looks or feels like our identity is splitting and part of me wants this and part of me wants that, for someone who sees through the identity, when that situation shows up, what does that look like to them?
Just what you just described. Looks the same.
Is saying part of me wants this and part of me wants that a misunderstanding or a confusion of what's happening?
Yeah, it's confusion. It's being pulled this way or seduced into going here, and quite often it's based on hope and fear. It's hope for something better, but fear of something worse. Like, I want to do this, I want to change jobs, but because I'm so invested in the result of every damn thing I'm doing, like I have to control everything. I can't just do something spontaneously, just simply move towards this or move away from that simply. There's always some kind of a politics going on there, argument back and forth. between this side of oneself and the other, this aspect of the personality. Some people, you can talk to them and you can watch the conversation going. You're talking to one person, but you can see you're talking to two people because it's split up. Sometimes that gets its extreme and then it becomes what? Medical condition. More.
Is there a more direct way to relate to that situation when it happens?
You mean to you or to someone else? To you? The most direct way to relate to any situation, no matter how polarized, is just to look at it and look at the polarity instead of trying to fix it. I have to like trying to decide something. If you're trying to decide whether to go this way or that way, this is just the very nature of samsara. There is no other way than this. It's just this. More? It's a good area to go into. I'm happy to do that with you.
Not yet.
When you're bowing, what is it to not be genuine? What does that look like, bowing?
Well, just to be caught in self-validation of grasping. I want this, I'm going to get this, I need to do this because. So, and totally separating yourself from the person sitting on the couch across the room from you into what you need, what you want, and what they're stopping you from getting. And on, all the stories. But to believe in the stories, believe in one story is right and the other story is wrong. My story is right, yours is wrong, or mine is wrong and yours is correct. And why can't I be more like you? Why do I keep falling into this terrible thing? Why can't I be, why? On and on, circularity. It's like 3 o'clock, it's 9 o'clock. 3 o'clock, it's 9 o'clock. So I say, use an analog watch. It's telling you, showing your confusion. You can use the second hand or the minute hand or the hour hand or the quatrefoil hand. Most people can't see that because it's on the watch face, especially if Timex has that, and it's invisible. There's 4 points on it. That's why they call it quatrefoil. More?
When you're bowing.
Well, let's talk more about quatrefoil. I'm going to ask about that.
Does yours light up?
Mine does light up. I see. I can't see. There's too much light in here. Go ahead.
Is not being genuine then confusion?
It's being enveloped in the confusion of this and that, self and other, and to simplify it, and just it can be incredible fear and suffering and pain that is can be unbearable when it's really, really deep. It might be in your living room, but you can be in hell and be in your living room. You can be in emotional hell and have it be worse than your house burning down, the intensity of it. More.
When you're bowing, so you say see it, or then fixation occurs. Does seeing this as illusion then free us from fixation, bowing?
So not in the literal sense as fixation's over here and finally got rid of it. Finally, I'm running away from the fixation. It's more that you're free of the attachment to anything, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's fixation or a smelly fish. You're just free of it, even though it's right in your nostrils. You're no longer fixated on it. The very suffering that comes out. This is what the Buddha was talking about. He didn't soft pedal anything. Life is suffering. Life is suffering. If you understand the Four Noble Truths, you're awake. But you have to understand them. You can't just understand them so you can teach them at the university or give a class in it. Not that the class in it isn't important. We have to start somewhere. We start with Provisional Teachings, which is what, what's your name again? Sokuzan is teaching. What day was it? Fridays. So structures about, concepts about it But everything that is conceptual there eventually becomes through the path of awareness, through the path of witnessing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, whatever comes up, that's it. Whatever comes up, that's it. You don't have to grasp it. It might grasp you. If it does, so what? Not even so what. That's dismissive. Just there it is. And that's too much. That's too descriptive. It's just as it is. And even that's extra. So it's done with the awareness. This is why I keep shaving off word after word until there are no phrase fillers left. There's no substitute for what is being pointed at when we say awareness.
You often say, don't abandon the confusion. How do we abandon confusion?
Well, a simple way is we're having confusion and we want to stop the confusion, so we take drugs. So, and I'll follow that up with, I'm not saying that if you have extreme depression and it's really, really difficult for you, and even life-threatening, that you shouldn't take Prozac or Wellbutrin or maybe one of the other drugs that I don't even know about, perhaps. And so that is a kind of like deliberate kind of ignorance. Let's cover this up. Those drugs do not tell you what it is. I don't know if there are ways, there's psychedelic kind of therapy and different kinds of therapy. Maybe there's something out there that works very well. I don't know about, so possibly. But the way I understand it is it's the awareness. Strengthen the awareness so you can see what it is that you're trying to push away. This doesn't mean that there isn't some kind of chemical imbalance. This is not separate. So yes, there could be chemical imbalance where you might need that. That's something to balance you. You might need, and I don't remember all the terms there, but I've run into them every now and then. So it's very situational. We should do whatever we need to do, not follow a standard, so that you have to meditate no matter what. You can't ever do anything else. No, you might need to stop meditating and go jogging. But another time you might need to stop jogging and sit down for a while. It could be just the opposite with two different people. That's why it's so very important to have a teacher. Very important. And it needs to be a true teacher, not a teacher who is promoting anything or who is looking for some kind of power over others. It needs to be somebody who will meet you where you're at, and when you ask questions or inquire, they meet you, they're direct with you and will fundamentally help you without making your life even more difficult, sending you packing in some other direction. That's not easy to do. Not everyone is ready for this kind of a radical practice. Some people need to just do something simple, something simpler, or maybe no meditation at all. More.
On the cushion, how do we abandon confusion?
Could be by switching gears. We have the confusion, and we deliberately go and think about something else, but it's just getting too difficult. So we just abandon that and go and thinking about you being an accountant with that kind of thinking process, ability to think in that way could go into some mechanical form of thinking. I'm not saying you do. It could go into another area where the dreaming area, which is very susceptible to fueling the confusion. You could possibly go into that. And there's countless ways that you could do that. We talk more. If you have more, go ahead.
I'm thinking of when you see thoughts arise.
Yes.
And you see them as thoughts, see the space around them. How do you not abandon confusion? Do you continue to look at the thoughts?
Yeah.
But not the content?
Look at whatever's there. Don't necessarily discriminate between anything. Just look at it. If any kind of discrimination, sometimes called discriminating awareness wisdom, that shows up, it will just show up on it without anyone behind the whole thing, anyone pushing that kind of activity or that kind of understanding. So just observe it. Yes. Just you.
So in that case, moving to the space, is that abandoning the thoughts? the confusion, bowing?
Not necessarily. It's your mind stream. There's no ownership there, but the consciousness that is arising as the illusion of a separate being is just consciousness only. It doesn't belong to anyone, but it has an appearance. It's kind of like it's on loan, but not really, to some kind of separate quality called the human form. But this all comes apart, but who you are does not come apart. It has not been put together. It's not compounded. Your actual identity is not compounded. You are the consciousness that this is arising in. This whole room full of people, the trees, the butter lamps in Tibet, if they're still burning. That's all arising in your consciousness. Consciousness doesn't arise in you. It just looks like it. More?
What about, so you often say clarity, we have clarity about confusion. So
Go ahead.
on the cushion again,
Yes.
when we're watching thoughts, watching whatever arises, is all of that confusion?
Yes.
Is whatever arises in consciousness confusion?
If it's in rising in consciousness, then it's just a lot of stuff.
What about if you're aware of it, is it still confusion?
Less, but there still could be a quality of grasping, rejecting, or shutting down. Do that. That's what you're watching. The focus initially is on what it is, its name, its meaning, the qualities, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth. But then eventually it starts to show what it rises in consciousness is how much you want it, how much you don't want it, or how much you want to block it out or stop it. That's the upadana part. That's the grasping part that comes out of the desire, that comes out of the feeling, that comes out of contact, and so on. Go ahead.
So all of that is confusion. The desire,
Yes.
the grasping.
That's it, that there's a being, a sense of someone going somewhere, getting something.
So as long as there is a belief in a self that is observing, that everything is confusion. Wow.
As long as you believe you are somebody that's observing stuff, or that's feeling things, and you think those are your possessions, those feelings, you're having the feelings. It's very interesting to have really intense feelings and know that they're not happening to a person, but still hurt like hell, that they're not happening to a person. They don't even have to go away. This doesn't mean you're some kind of stoic, heroic figure who is able to withstand anything. It's not that kind of heroism, let alone courage. I don't even use the word courage. Not that you can't. I just don't use it.
What about, so when we're looking at what moves, we are endeavoring to see the self or the ego, the false self or the ego?
Well, conceptually, but we're just trying to see what this is, instead of buying into I'm somebody looking at something else. So by just watching the movement, you will be introduced over time. Eventually, you will be introduced to an apparent identity that is aligned with the consciousness that is producing thoughts that you think is producing thoughts, or that is witnessing things that it looks like they're out there, when really they're not. They're not even in here, but they're more likely to be missed in here. Whereas out there, you can run away from them, you can knock them over, you can support them or pick them up. But that's all happening within consciousness.
Could that be called othering?
Maybe. Something else. It's that. Blaming, crediting anything outside, even though there's a relative structure that might make it provable. You could take it to court and say, yes, this person did help and do this and do this and this. that you can't find the first cause. That's why it's so difficult, and that's why some people just stay with a mundane path, because at least there you can get some results. There's even psychotherapists who are claim to have a Buddhist orientation. But anytime you're about fixing anything, repairing anything, even healing anything, it's suspicious. Over here it is, but it might not be to that person, and I would respect that. Someone teaches in a different way, I would respect that. Sir?
Pashan bowing. What does consciousness look like without an identity claiming ownership on it? Yeah.
It doesn't. Doesn't look like anything.
Pashan bowing. Are you saying then consciousness is emptiness?
Yeah, I don't know. That gets a little corny. No conclusion, no exclusion, no ignorance, no otherness at all. You go back to that same word, empty of other, empty of another thing or another size, empty of that. So one of the words, of course, is emptiness or shunyata. Those are used, but they're more path. They're talking about path, talking about the path quality of it, rather than some kind of fundamental understanding that everything drops away there. All the basic teachings, everything drops away. When I say drops away, it doesn't actually do anything. It just stops being separate. So therefore, everything you see is very mirror-like. It's not actually a mirror, and it's not even mirror-like. But need to say something. So that's what we say, or some people say. Chisho.
Chisho, does an intention or attitude of being prepared to lose, does that help while dealing with the asymmetry of the mind? Bye.
Yes, I think that very well said. I think it does, and it's difficult. Just Trungpa Rinpoche's, one of his slogans, and I don't know where they made it up or got it from somewhere else, but said a willingness to be a fool, just a willingness to, instead of this constant protecting ourselves against looking wrong, or what if somebody noticed that we're not very smart, or what if we don't get something right, or we can't really do this because any number of things, but just a willingness to just fall apart and be foolish or look foolish. I just got on TikTok, or actually Zim put me on TikTok. I made the big mistake when I'm busy protecting my identity here in my what's that called? My image, my public image. I had made the mistake of dancing in the middle of the zendo. What did somebody do? Send it to Zim. What did he do? Put it on TikTok. So now, every now and then I have to go in and look at that, dance. I love to watch people dance, but I don't particularly care to watch myself dance. That's not too graceful. So, but a willingness to do that. So, okay, it feels foolish. So I'm not talking about willingness to be a fool where you never really have to experience this, because your wonderful willingness to be a fool is so powerful that you're always ready for foolishness, but it doesn't happen. No, the actual foolishness comes up and actually shows you how full of yourself you are and how little you know about any damn thing. Further questions? Isaac.
What is the fourth great precept, no illusory words, pointing to?
I don't know, one of you bodhisattvas want to answer that? Why don't you answer it?
Stop lying.
Huh? When you said stop lying. But first you have to see the lies. You have to see that you're probably lying every time you open your mouth on some level. But one, just to say, well, I think you shouldn't do that, or I think this, or I think that. The primary misunderstanding is that there is a person. So we're always lying. As soon as you say I, there isn't anyone. There is no I. There's some dynamic that shows up that way. It would be a very good thing, since you're sewing a Raksu, it would be a very good thing for you to contemplate that one. Write it down, memorize it, read the long form, read the short form of it, contemplate it. And notice that you don't have to stop lying, even though it says don't lie. You don't have to stop killing things, even though it says don't kill. You don't have to stop, but be very aware anytime you're taking the life of anything. Be very aware of what that is. You can't live without taking life. And some people, go ahead.
I believe it says all words are expressions of the true Dharma.
Yes.
How is someone that expressing confusion, whether that's myself or someone else, how is that an expression of the true Dharma?
Because if one is one who sees, one who understands, one who is no longer locked up by their beliefs or opinions or confusion, then they can't speak anything but the truth. It's not that they're intending to speak the truth. They speak the truth.
That's fine. So,
which is, just to give you a little bit more help there, which is also a lie, because anything coming out as an expression is a relative, so it's dependently arisen. So on its own, it might be relatively true, but it's ultimately incorrect because it's appearing and it goes away. So it's as a temporary quality, which means has no duration. Go ahead.
I think I answered my next question.
Okay. Yes, Kevin.
Kevin Bowing. When we become aware of these conversations, and maybe they're quite habitual, is there a case for cutting them rather than just observing?
You have to repeat that. I got distracted by Kelly.
Stop being cute. Kevin Bowing, when we notice the conversations with confusion, is there a case to be made for cutting rather than just observing?
Yes, but cutting is, and that's used especially in tantric approaches, working with the mind. But that cutting needs to be not your awareness, your clarity, your seeing of what is there is so clear that that's the only thing you can do. That it has to be cut. But there's no one who, aha, I think I got this. I'm going to get out the sword of prajna and I'm going to whack that thing to bits. And that'll be the end of my problems. Yeah, you can't do that. It has to be. It will come out of nowhere. Like a ghost coming out of the closet, and you'll just do it with no past and no future. There'll be no justification, and if it's followed up by any kind of justification, then you weren't really there, and that was operating in a more of a I need to stop this or start that, more out of passion, aggression, and ignorance. But the cutting needs to be complete, thorough.
Kevin Bowing. So what distinguishes aggression and pushing away from, say, the karma of destroying Brahman?
It's a little bit there's too much whipped cream on it. You want to just run that by me again? Make it as raw as you can.
How can I tell the difference between pushing something away because I don't like it versus cutting?
So as long as you're in a versus mentality, you need to watch that polarity for quite a while before you drop anything into gear. Just watch the polarity there. And it's about awareness rather than about being right, or awareness rather than avoiding being wrong, about the awareness of it. You may never really, you may never cash that situation in. It might be your awareness of that, and what comes out of that may be barely noticeable to you. So because you're not operating out of right and wrong anymore. And without right and wrong, how do you know what the hell you're doing? So without the ballast or the balance of that coming out of samsara, out of relative truth, it's hard to know what's going on. So contemplating that may arise, but there'll be no credential with it. Are you following me a little bit?
Kevin Bowing.
Yes, sir.
That's what the image of the ghost coming out of the cupboard is.
Yes. Closet. Get it right. Closet would work, I guess. No, ghost. Where did I miss that?
I miss it.
Oh, good.
Because
Yes, it's basically saying this. It's not definitive, so it's not. You see. It looks like something might have been cut, but there was no cutter present, and there was no cutting, and there was nothing cut. Threefold purity is another way of saying that in traditional sense. The threeness of something suddenly collapses into nothing happened at all.
So did you say the threeness?
Threefold purity. You can look it up in any Buddhist.
I just couldn't hear you.
Yes, sir. Anyone on? My goodness, there's 45 people there. I can't see 20 of you on the screen. So if you have a question out there, just speak up, and I will listen until you say something. Well, then I will ask you guys a question out there in TV land. What the hell are you doing here? No questions. Let's see.
Kyoshin bowing. When you talk about all the sense doors and just receiving, one time you said maybe more than that. Why you said like the visual part of it is even to be emphasized or watched more carefully or something like that. Like it's more important. And I was wondering, why is the visual more important?
Well, there's a lot to be said about it, but I can put it fairly simply. All of the senses. Let's take the 5 sense consciousnesses. That all of those are how many are there? There's 5 of them. All of those are very intimate. Even sound is like kind of in our ear, but even though it's across, we have a visual reference because there's someone over there 30 feet away playing a guitar. But the smell of something, the fragrance of something, the taste of something, the touch of something, the feeling quality, everything is right here with this body, with the first skandha of form. So it's always informing this as being your ear. Your hearing, your smelling, your tasting, they all seem like this. We're so identified with this body as being us. And this is just one big nerve ending of the universe. They're just you. But it's like the nerve ending got really self-conscious and decided to be somebody special and started getting, going for a haircut. So they look special. So further, sense of seeing, even all the other senses, including thinking, seems to happen here. It doesn't actually happen in here. We just think it does, or scientists do, but actually there is no spatial referent for that. Consciousness is what I'm talking about. So of all those senses, even though sound comes from over there, and other things are on the tip of your tongue or in your olfactory sense and so on, sight is over there. It's just obviously, let me fling this. It's over there. It's not over here. That's why you can watch somebody get, not you, I'm sure you wouldn't do this, but you can watch somebody get totally abused, harmed, hurt, like you had to witness last night in your neighborhood, something like that. And it's in the distance. It's somebody else. It's somebody else's situation. It's their situation. It's not me. It's not over here. It's over there. So this is why when I say why, don't misunderstand me. I'm not particularly judging people who practice vipassana or any other any meditation. But you could look at it. You could consider it. As soon as you close your eyes, all the other senses will agree everything's happening right here. Everything is right here. Whereas you open your eyes, then there's this big expanse out in front of you called your living room or your meditation hall or a football field or what's that new telescope? Huh?
James Webb.
Webb telescope. You can see a long way if you look that way, and you can't see very far if you look this way. I'm just saying it's an intense and insistent structure in consciousness that says everything is separate. It reifies that. Sound does the same thing. You hear sound, it's a distance away. You can kind of have a sense of gap or distance there. So it reinforces the separate identity. And so beyond that, all I would say is just be aware of that. Just be aware that what you're looking at actually is your own projection. You're seeing what's happening is, it looks like we're looking at something, but actually something's looking at us. It's the tree branches, the sun, as you probably know, I don't need to explain it to you, the sun is hitting the tree branch, or the leaves, and that is coming towards us. And we're receiving that. Everything, you receive everything. Same thing with thoughts. You receive thoughts. I'm receiving thoughts right now. We all are. Just receive. Isan.
Isan bowing. That tree image is a nice one. So my question is, sometimes the sense fields bring in something that feels like it's in the heart, the taste of raspberries or the beauty of sunshine through the trees. Is that emotion still confusion?
Yes. Pleasant, though. So it's confusion because there's someone who's experiencing something else. It's pleasant. We're receiving that. It's pleasurable. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to correct. It's just awareness that arises in awareness. Everything is arising in awareness. Pleasant things, unpleasant things, neutral things that have no meaning to us.
Is there some way of practice that would be helpful in recognizing that as confusion and not taking it any place?
Yes. Just watch how you take it someplace. Let's just start with using your question. Just notice how something shows up, the receiving of it is completely enjoyable, and then we do something with it. Or we want more of that. Greed starts right there. Or we want a little bit differently. We would like a little bit more sunshine or a little bit more chocolate on our ice cream. So some kind of second noble truth, wanting things to be different than they are. Of course, the obvious way this shows up is when we are in pain, we want that pain to go away. Completely reasonable, makes total sense. but we are actually disagreeing with dependent origination. You're actually trying to set up yourself as your own little nerve ending that has some kind of say-so. Like Trungpa Rinpoche would use a grain of sand in the middle of the Sahara or some desert. But we want some to be special, want to be someone.
Last question. So that takes me to a place of, so what's the point of being here? You know, if we're not experiencing joy, pain, you know, what's the point?
So the very nature of ego is to ask, what's the point? Because the ego's over here and looking at everything else, what's the point? And this is what was difficult for the existentialists back 100 years ago, because they could see the kind of relative emptiness. What's the point of this? But there was no mind training to see what the true, they just bought into their true nature of a really smart intellectual, read any of them, Albert Camus, or the other existentialist, Kierkegaard. They're all trying to make sense out of something and then present it as this is how something makes sense or doesn't make sense, or how the nonsense making aspect of life actually does make sense in a deeper level. And all kinds of thinkers toiling around that. The myth of Sisyphus, if you read that, where Sisyphus is pushing a rock up the hill, rolls back down, push it back up the hill, rolls back down. So pretty much any 9-to-5 job is like that. You haven't noticed? Push it up the hill, rolls back down. Next day, come back in, same rock, different hill, and we just keep doing it. But what's the point? Actually, the point is to find out who is it that's asking that. Let's find out: is there someone that actually has an interest in what you're doing? Is you're acting out in a very simple way. I'm not accusing you of anything. I do it too, so I know about this. For you to sit here you're born, you're here, and instead of and there's contact, and there's feeling, and then there's what's the point? So then that's the feeling part of it. What's the point? Some kind of existential drifting. What's the point? What's the point? Teenagers do this all the time. Young people driving in a car who are 10 years old do this all the time. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? What's the point of being something where you're not there yet? You should be there. So this is why we create games of counting telephone poles and blue Chevrolets. If you've had children, or if you've done one. Mm-hmm. So the idea there is just to what's the point? I'm not saying get rid of that or stop asking that, but just say, when you say what's the point, you could inquire a little bit deeper and saying, who wants to know that? What is it that needs a point? Do I need a point? Look at all the incredible expression of relative truth. Flowers, humans, voices, children. I'm not trying to sell you on some kind of God realm, but I'm saying everything is incredibly vivid and blazing and present all the time, past and future, extra. There's just this, and it's overwhelmingly present if you're on receive. Everybody hear that? Receive. Whatever shows up, I don't care how shitty it is, I don't know how great it is, or how neutral it is, just receive it. Don't add anything on, do no calculation. That's a big assignment. How do you do that? Meditate for 20 or 30 years. Sit down, hold still, face the wall. Have a teacher, have a teaching, and have a community. Without that form, then what's the point?
Thank you.
Thank you. One last question.
Kirschenbauing, like I was talking to somebody earlier, and to me, like the perfection. Yes, a Dharma discussion.
Oh my
anyway,
Let's hear about it.
it was about the perfections or the noble qualities, and even I would say awakening also. To me, that's my purpose. So what you were just saying with the last person seemed like purpose wasn't something to look for. Bowing.
So what's your question?
Am I on the right track? If I asked myself, well, what is my purpose? So I set my intention for these perfections and for awakening. And so I think that's my purpose. And then something you said a minute ago seemed like maybe that's not the right track or whatever.
I wasn't talking to you, talking to her.
Okay.
No, you're on the right track. Keep doing it.
Okay, good.
You'll find it. She'll find it eventually.
Thanks a lot, Val.
Okay, we can go elsewhere.